boys, so it looks like there's a chance that we get Star Wars Battlefront 3 a little bit earlier than we expected. EA has to have a big bang, and it was just confirmed that there's going to be a big, bad new Star Wars game coming from EA, and I cannot wait to end up playing this game. We're going to end up going to all the details and all of the brand new news about this, but it is very, very exciting, and you're going to want to stay to the end of the video because it's going to get a little bit crazy. If you like this video and you want to see more like this, before we get into this, if you guys want to hit that like and sub button, I'd really appreciate it as we are on the road to 1K subs, and let's get right into it. Star Wars EA just actually ended up announcing that there's going to be a brand new Star Wars FPS game, which in my mind, with all of the giant backlash that EA has been getting on all of their failed Star Wars titles, the only one that they have had really good, obviously, is Jedi Fallen Order, with Jedi Survivor coming right around the corner with a March release date, and nothing's wrong with that game. That game's going to end up coming out and be probably really successful. But everybody knows that there has been huge fallout with the Battlefront titles and all of the lack of Star Wars games, and that's why Disney ended up opening his exclusive. One of the big things that just ended up coming out, actually, is that there's going to be a chance that Star Wars Battlefront 3 is going to come a lot sooner than I think. There's going to be a first-person shooter coming from EA, which is going to be coming in the next couple of years. It's going to be the next big game from EA, and it's probably already in development. Now, one thing that we do know, since Disney wants 2 AAA games coming every single year for Star Wars, now obviously we're getting the Jedi Survivor coming in March, but there's no other Star Wars game that's going to be slated for the new year and towards the end of the year. So one of the big problems, obviously Ubisoft, and I made that video about that, how there's a new game coming out. It's going to be an open world RPG, which a lot of fans are really excited for, me included, and that's going to be awesome and amazing. But we still don't have a Star Wars shooter game, a multiplayer game, coming in the next couple of years. So this is what the article in EA actually ends up saying. So obviously it talks about it on the main website, so you know that this is real and that this is coming, and that they announced that there is a upcoming new Star Wars FPS from Peter Hirschman and a strategy game coming also. Now, the strategy game, it kind of confuses me, but in my opinion, the strategy game is probably going to be more of a mobile game / Nintendo Switch game. I would be stunned if the strategy game is like a big AAA title, but the FPS game will be a AAA title that ends up coming out. And they don't really end up giving a ton of kind of new direction of what this is going to be. Now, we don't know if this is going to be a Battlefront 3 title, or this could end up being like a Republic Commando 2 type of game, or maybe they just end up creating their own type of shooter game. But we do know that first-person shooter and Star Wars from EA means that it's probably going to be a multiplayer shooter, with all of the influx of RPG games from Star Wars, which end up doing pretty well. But there hasn't been many, obviously, multiplayer games, so Star Wars Battlefront 3 is definitely a big possibility that this gets in development. However, if this gets in development, I would think that this would have to take full force into EA, and one of the big problems with EA is they end up pulling Star Wars developers working on a brand new game that are really passionate about that game and bringing them towards their Battlefield franchise, which has been kind of off and on the past couple of years. But hopefully that doesn't happen again. Hopefully they've learned from their mistakes. Battlefront 2 it was a tough launch, man. It was one of the comeback games of the year, as that game was completely different than the game that ended up coming out with all the microtransactions. Absolute failure of EA to put out a game that a lot of fans really liked. That they have a lot of pressure on their next shooter game, and if they don't have another good shooter game, Disney is just going to keep on going to outside developers for shooters, and before you know it, if EA is not careful, Respawn will be the only company that is kind of under EA that is going to be working on Star Wars games. This is the failure of all the other studios, and the only kind of success they've had in the past 5 years since they've had the license, I would honestly say, is Fallen Order. And probably Survivor. Survivor will do really, really well. It's kind of a bank. Whether the game is amazing or terrible, everybody's going to be buying that game because the first game was so great. And I'm pretty sure that the game's going to be amazing, and so I'm not really worried about it. But as far as other titles that they've had, it hasn't really hit the mark. Star Wars Battlefront 1 was underwhelming. The DLC content just wasn't that great, and the game just wasn't very fun. There was a lot of things promised at launch that just didn't happen. And same with Battlefront 2. I mean, we never even got Mustafar, Coruscant, all of the really cool maps that we're used to seeing in Star Wars games. They're big Battlefront maps that have been there since the old Lucasfilm games. Never ended up coming, and they did say that they were going to come later, but they stopped support to pull those developers to Battlefield, and it was kind of a really sad thing. And so I would be really stunned if anything else really happened that was good. Well, it's definitely looking that we get a brand new Star Wars title in the FPS late 2023 or 2024, but it's going to be the next big EA game after Jedi Survivor, and honestly, I am very excited for it. It's going to be a really good, I know it's an EA game, and you got to kind of hold your breath. If I'm being honest, I feel like the Ubisoft game from Star Wars coming in 2024 is going to be a little bit better, but the one thing that I will say is that EA has more developers, more manpower, and if they really want to make a good Star Wars game, if they are really pushing to be the brink in the new age of Star Wars games and be the top of the franchise, they're going to have to put out a good first-person multiplayer shooter, and that's what we're wanting to see as fans, so we really hope that that happens, and this is kind of the news that came out. Obviously, I'll keep you guys updated on what comes out with this, and whenever they end up announcing what type of game it is, but I think that's going to be Battlefront 3. They have to have a bang, and if they want to sell the most copies, it's going to be a Battlefront 3 game. Everybody's going to buy Battlefront 3 because it's the game that everybody wants, and the mediocre fan loves. I know that a lot of people just want a multiplayer shooter, which would be fine, and I would be a big fan of also, but a straight Battlefront game with heroes and giant scale battles just seems like EA's ballpark if they can just finally hit it. Anyways, boys, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you guys drop a like and a sub as we are on the road to 1,000 subscribers on the second channel. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a great rest of your day. I'll talk to you boys later, and peace.